Hi, this is Nisha, and this video is on why I still believe the Serbian Zastava InPap is a good gun for the money and a good gun for a range use for a shooter. Because there's been a lot of talk about this. I have my InPap DF underfolder out. Sorry, I don't own a standard InPap M70 with the 1.0 mil receiver. And I just checked inventory and we don't have any in the store right now. I could have sworn we did, but I guess they already sold. And because we had this out doing a different video, here's my Zastava OPAP M70. Now this video is not about this gun. We have multiple videos on it. I just wanted to bring it out for comparison and to have something else on the table, honestly. Now the InPap was the second generation of the PAP M70 series to come out of Serbia. It appeared in 2013 and replaced the original so-called just PAP M70. And the PAP M70 was the first square back gun to come in that could take standard Zastava Yugo pattern furniture. It was imported by Century, and the InPap still is today for that matter. Before it, the only PAPs available in the USA were slantback, and they were single stack. They were pretty difficult to convert. These were imported by EAA for a number of years, and while very well made guns, were not very successful. It took Century to bring the PAP M70 in that could take standard mags. They put in 922R parts, so on and so forth. Well, the original PAP had a couple of issues. We have a video comparing the three generations from about a year ago, but it had a couple of issues, and so they replaced it with the InPap, which is still imported today. The original had a 1.5 mil receiver, same as this OPAP here. The InPap, for whatever reason, they went to a 1.0 mil receiver. These are still built entirely in Serbia by Crvena Zastava, the former communist factory. It was rebuilt after the Yugoslavian Civil War and continues to manufacture select fire weapons for the Serbian military as well as for many export customers. These InPaps are sold by Century with removable muzzle devices, usually a slant type. They come in with a muzzle nut welded on. They do not have a bayonet lug, and Century doesn't bother to add one back. And the furniture can vary. Now this being the underfolder, we have the original Yugoslavian pattern handguards made of original wood, and we have an original Yugo underfolding buttstock. The fixed stocked version will usually come with American-made handguards and a fixed American-made buttstock. The first ones would have a fixed stock with a rubber recoil pad and no sling swivel. Later, more recent ones for the last couple of years have come in with a sling swivel on the stock but no rubber recoil pad. Other features of the InPap series that are common to both variants, we have a 16-inch medium heavy profile cold hammer forged barrel. It is not chrome lined because Zastava just doesn't chrome their 7.62x39 guns. For military use or for civilian, SKS or AK doesn't matter. They just don't. We have a nice military grade blued finish, which is very similar to the finish on the military guns. I'm sure they use the same treatment. We have a bolt carrier left in the white, polished carrier. That's nice. We have the heavier, dutier, smooth top cover taken from the original AK. A little thicker than most AKMs. We have a spring-loaded button in the back for the takedown. This was originally introduced for grenade launching to lock the dust cover on so it wouldn't come flying off during grenades. We have an original receiver made over in Serbia. We have on the underfolder, we have 3 rivets in the front. We also have 3 rivets in the back here. The original InPap fixed stock had a 2 rivet, very similar to this OPAP here. Can't heavy gun, guys. I'll flip it up. Had 2 rivets stacked vertically. More recent NPAPs will have 3 rivets in the back, holding the rear trunnion in. And unlike the Wasser, the NPAP has a dimpled magwell. It also, on the NPAP 1.0 mil receiver version, has the X and Y stampings, which many prefer. Now, interestingly, the OPAP does not have the XY stamps. Again, this is a 1.5 mil receiver as well. I find those features of the receivers interesting. Kind of gives a little more of a military look to the NPAP. So that's the gun in a nutshell. Up until about 2014, 2015, the NPAP was very well regarded, but then AK Operators Union did a torture test, 5,000 round torture test, and they had some trouble with some cracked rivets and I believe some minor cracking on the rear of the receiver, and a couple of other issues. Also, Battlefield Las Vegas published a thing saying that they were pulling the NPAPs off their firing line because they were prematurely failing. So the NPAP has had very mixed to negative press the last 2 to 3 years, and this has caused many to shy away from buying it. I think this is it's pretty silly. I think the NPAP is still a really good gun, and this video is why I think so. First off, we do have a completely imported gun. This just 922R'd and converted over here by Century. All your key parts are made by Zastava, the same folks who made all those Yugo parts kits that everyone loves. The barrel is top notch. And the price tag really can't be beat. These things are anywhere, they've been as low as $450, $500. Nowadays they're hovering around $600 for the fixed stock or $650 for the underfolder. So some things that are true detractions. We do not have a chrome line barrel. This is some people don't like this. I personally, I can't say I like that it's not chromed, but since surplus ammo, corrosive ammo, and 7.62 hasn't been available for a long time, everyone's shooting commercial out of these, and so I don't think it's a big deal. It's a hammer forged barrel, that's nice. It does take the extended Yugo pattern handguards, which means that not all handguard types, and you have to have basically a specific type for this. But I like the longer handguards. It gives you more room and keeps just that much more of the barrel is concealed. And more American manufacturers are making aftermarket Yugo pattern handguards. Those are really things you can talk about. And on the fixed stock version, it takes a Yugo pattern fixed stock. Much like with the handguards, it's specific, and you might argue, but again, more and more American manufacturers make these. So, what's going on with these? There do just seem to be some legitimate issues, but there seem to be some concerns, people saying that the receiver is not heat treated as hard as it should be. I've also heard people say that the barrel isn't as heat treated and as hard as it should be. So let's start there, because this is an easy one to dismiss. I've been reading about it as much as I could for the last year. There have been a few people that have claimed that Yugo barrels aren't as hard as some other barrels, but here's the thing, they're talking about all Yugo Serbian barrels, be they from select fire guns or semi-autos. The thing is though, just because they might be a little softer, and I stress might, doesn't mean they're so soft that there's a problem. Not all metal is going to be the same hardness, and actually being too hard has its own issues as well. So even if the barrels are made of slightly softer steel, it's not soft enough that it's ever caused an issue. After all, wars have been fought with these rifles. Actually, Zastava has exported more rifles that have actually been used in conflict zones than most of other manufacturers outside of, say, China and perhaps East Germany and Russia, of course. So the barrels are top notch. I don't see any reason to doubt them. No one's ever shown evidence of a barrel bursting, cracking, or having premature rifling or crown wear. Plus, you get a slightly heavier profile than on most AKMs because it has more of the AK profile barrel. So the barrels to me seem good to go. If you actually read any evidence, it's very circumstantial, and even then, guys aren't saying they're bad barrels. They're just, saying things. So a lot of it's been taken out of context. As to the receivers, let's start with the Battlefield Las Vegas. They weren't using semi-autos. They were converting these to full automatic. So most of the NPAPs that were on their firing line were being fired in full auto. Okay? I'm sure they did a perfectly good job of converting them. But I'm also sure it's a rental in Las Vegas and that people were running the hell out of them. You know how people treat rented cars and so on and so forth. These guns had a hard life. And Battlefield was the first to say that every gun they had failed. It was a matter of when. Segas, Wassers, they would all fail at some point. Now they said that the NPAPs were failing prematurely, but they did not say at what round count. They said that some Wassers made it to 80,000 and up. Did the NPAP only make it to 60, 40, 20, 10? We don't know how many rounds it made it to. They never let that information be known. They also didn't mention how many guns that this encompassed, and we don't know if the guns were from multiple batches or one single import batch. It's possible that they were all from one batch, and maybe one batch was not as, there could have been a quality control issue with one batch. That happens to any manufacturer. Or they could have had guns from multiple batches over a couple of year time span. We don't know. The information there is so vague. So I don't really know how to take that into consideration without full info. Now the AK Operators Union test, he's done 2. The second test, the NPAP passed. It had a few wear spots at 5,000 rounds, and I think there was a small crack near a rivet in the back on the fixed stock gun again. He didn't test the underfolder. But it wasn't so bad that he felt like it couldn't be sent to a viewer, so it was sent out. That was one gun. It was fired quite extensively. It did have problems with the stock getting loose. This is not Zastava or the NPAP's fault. This is because of Century Arms. The wood is crap on these guns. It's balsa wood at the best, and it's not just an issue with the NPAPs. It's the same type of wood they put on their Wassers and their RAS 47s and C39 V2s. It's just not good wood. Any of those guns at 5,000 rounds, the stock is going to get loose and probably fall off. Same goes for the handguards getting hot. If they're the US handguards, they just don't seem to be as good of a heat sink as the original because the wood's not near as dense. It's much more porous. He also had problems with this spring-loaded latch back here. The little nut fell out and the latch came out. Now he fixed it with a rock, I believe. But even if this was out, it doesn't change anything. Most of your Kalashnikovs don't have this part. So I agree it's annoying that it fell out, but it definitely not only didn't keep the gun from functioning, it's not even important to functioning. It's really just a leftover from military guns that it's in here. A lot of your guns that are sold as semis don't even have a latch. For example, the Polish Archer did not have one, and the Saiga SGLs didn't have one, even though the military counterparts did for grenade launching. It wasn't this style of latch, it was on the recoil guide, but you get the idea. Anyway, it passed the test. And you would think, since it did pass the 5,000 round test, even with not an A+, maybe considered an A- or a B+, it still passed, that would have made people feel better about it. But for some reason, people seem to read what they want to read into these things. And also remember that it was just a test of one gun, and there's several variables. Ammo type, mags, heat, cold, how fast, how slow. The faster you fire a gun, the more wear it's going to put on it, the more stress it's going to put on it. So, I don't feel that there's exceedingly a lot of evidence to show these guns, especially newer ones brought in the last couple of years, are bad. Some people have performed Rockwell hardness tests on these receivers. Here's the problem. Results have varied across the board. Some guys say they're too soft, some guys say they're too hard, and some guys say they're too exactly right. So it's like Goldilocks testing here. The problem there is, and I'm sure everyone who did it and published the results did it with complete honesty. I'm not calling anyone out. But without knowing the methodology of how they tested them, did they use a control? What was the setting? You know, you don't know. With the test, there's more that go. There's lots of variables that go into it, so it's hard to just take the results. And again, they're not testing 20 or 30 guns. They might be testing 2, 3, or even 1. So it's really hard to say with 1 or 2 examples being tested. If we wanted to do this, really, we should get a couple of 100 guns, spending the entire production time, import duration, test them all identically in the same method in a climate controlled and very controlled setting, laboratory clean type setting, to get a good accurate result. And of course someone checking over the results, making sure there wasn't one of those silly errors that us humans make, and of course the results should be repeatable. So while I think these tests were done in good faith, I just, again, kind of like the Battlefield Las Vegas, don't know the details enough to do it. What I do know is you don't see videos on YouTube of these exploding. I've never heard of an NPAP letting go like, say, you see on some of the RAS-47s or IOs or some of the homebrew guns. I've literally seen homebrew guns come apart up here when the rivets weren't done right. Receiver cracking or not, you just don't see these failing on camera. And the thing is, Century has sold tens of thousands of these. On the other hand, you can say, well, how many of those have actually had a high round count? We don't know. Some guys buy these and never shoot them. Some guys might put 500 rounds a year. Rob Ski is unique, and why his testing is actually valid is he's putting 5,000 rounds through them quite quickly in a short time period. This is something most people can't afford or don't have time to do. So I'm not, not discrediting that. I think Rob does an excellent job for someone who was escaping from a mental ward and got over to the USA hiding in the mag well of a 747, or excuse me, wheel well of a 747. No, really, Rob, we all appreciate your work. Don't get me wrong. It looks like hard work, though. You know, the videos make it look so hard. But I think you would be the first, Rob would be the first to admit that he is a sample set of one. He's just a trigger puller. And obviously, if he had the money and time, he'd love to test 5 or 50 guns, but it costs so much money just to test one. So I'm just saying, keep tests like that in perspective of what they are. As to the issues, really what you hear of are maybe a cracked rivet now and again after a certain number of rounds, or small receiver cracks. You don't hear of trunnions letting go, exploding. You really don't hear much in the way of unreliability. These seem to cycle just fine. You do hear the furniture being crap, but since it's the US stuff, no argument there. It is crap. It's one reason I like the underfolder. What I suspect, and here's my theory, one issue that's bandied about that I actually do agree with is the recoil spring. For whatever reason, the springs that come in these seem to be subpar. They're either not properly tempered or they're too short, because I noticed after shooting mine it was noticeably shorter in this gun here. We shot it a year ago, so I replaced it with a Wolf spring and have had no troubles since. So I would say that if you do get one of these, spend $5 and replace the recoil spring, because something seems to be wrong, at least with some of these springs. I suspect that the metal is just not quite treated right. I don't know why. Maybe they're using leftovers or so on and so forth. I don't know. Now, if the spring is too light, what's going to happen, this carrier is going to come back very hard and hit that rear trunnion. On an AK, the bolt carrier impacts the rear trunnion. It's just a matter of degree, how hard and how fast. With the proper spring, it's cushioned. But if that spring is not doing its job, it's slamming into the back here very aggressively. This could very much lead to cracking in the rear or the rivet, and it's going to be putting extra tension, extra stress on the spring back here because the guide rod's held in by it. That's my theory as to why this went away on Rob so early on. I think on his gun and a lot of new guns, this carrier, when you're being fired, is coming back too hard, too fast. And related to that, this seems to be a little over-gassed, which means the gas port might be drilled a little large for a lot of the ammo we're shooting. Now all AKs are over-gassed. That's just how they work. That's why we have holes to let off excess pressure in the gas block and or gas tube. So between being overgassed and maybe having a weak spring, I think this carrier is coming back and hitting the rear trunnion too aggressively, and that's causing the cracks and problems. It's also, we're shooting our ammo we shoot here, be it Golden Tiger, Brown Bear, Tula, Wolf. It's possible that whatever ammo they manufacture in Serbia today is a little bit different spec, and that's the ammo that Zastava is tuning these guns for over there. I don't know. So yeah, stress in the back, I think it's that. There's also been talk, and this has pretty much been put to bed by now, but about the tail of the bolt carrier mushrooming. Obviously impacting the rear trunnion aggressively isn't good, but I am one of the proponents that I think it was caused by the early Tapco triggers that were in these for a couple of years. It's known that the Tapco hammers were A, overly hardened, and B, the angle, the face was not done right, so it impacted the bolt carrier as it came back at the wrong angle, and this led to mushrooming. And I really feel it was the Tapco trigger because you can see the same mushrooming in Wassers with the Tapco or AES-10Bs. My AES-10B has some. Even other guns like Arsenals that have had Tapcos put in have started to show it. And my own Archer, my Polish Archer, which came from IO with one, started to show it. So I think that's more a fault of the hammer, and that's why it's not just a thing that appears in the OPAP. I do feel that these receivers are made in Zastava to spec, at least as much as, is reasonable. I point to the fact that these have X and Y stampings. Why would they go ahead and put the Y stamping in on this one, but not say the OPAP, if it wasn't a military stamping? Also, it would just cost more for them to make a separate batch of receivers and barrels and trunnions and everything for their semi-autos than just use the same ones off their production line. So I think these are the parts themselves are coming off the same machines, and they're being made by the same workers and out of the same metal as their military guns. Now, are they using rejected parts? This is a favorite theory that's been bandied about since the days of the Wasser. I'll just say this, there's no evidence either that ever came to light with the Wasser or the NPAP that rejected parts were ever used in it. So I would say the two things you can do if you have a Tapco hammer, or swap it out for like a Rack 1 or one of the new Arsenals. I kind of like the new FIME Arsenal trigger group. It's kind of patterned after the Molot. And definitely put a different recoil spring in. At the very least, a standard spring from a different gun, or even better, a Wolf extra power. I feel that those two small changes, which will cost you, the spring's $5, a trigger group's anywhere from 20 to 50, depending on what you want to buy, unless you go way out for a target trigger. But it's a small thing, and if you have the fixed stock, I would also replace the Century buttstock with something better, because it will give out on you. But it won't hurt the gun per se. So first off, I would do the recoil spring. Now, what's funny to me is the fixed stock MPAP was tested by Rob. And it has the staggered, let me flip around to the other side so you can see it better, rivet pattern in the back, which isn't the best for controlling recoil. Everyone still loves the OPAP. But, this hasn't been through one of Rob's tests, and as far as I know, Battlefield Las Vegas didn't use any OPAPs. It's entirely possible that one of these would experience the same type of failures in a ROB test that the NPAP did. Everyone says, well, it has a 1.5 mil receiver, it's stronger, it wouldn't do that. I agree, that seems logical, but until you actually put a gun through this, through the test, you don't know, because everything else is the same on the OPAP. This barrel assembly, same barrel, same bolt group, same top cover. The only real difference between the NPAP and the OPAP is the heavier receiver, and the earlier OPAPs had some M70B1 parts like the sights and furniture. I've been told that later ones have more commercial parts. I don't know this firsthand, so I'm not going to say that. But the major difference between the NPAP and the OPAP is just the receiver. Everything else is the same, and these are built in the same factory again on the same machines by the same people. And these don't even have the XY stamped receivers, which is interesting to me. I don't know why. But if you're going to say the NPAP isn't good, isn't trustworthy because of the AKOU test, or the Battlefield Las Vegas results, you really can't just assume the OPAP is good because it hasn't been put through the same test. You see what I'm saying? If one of them is questionable, really both should be. Likewise, in the similar vein, the NPAP DF is a different model from the NPAP fixed stock. And again, the NPAP DF has not been put through the AK Operators Union torture test, nor did Battlefield Las Vegas, to the best of my knowledge, ever convert any of these to full auto for use as rental guns. It's not only just different in that it has an underfolding stock and comes with the original handguards, the rivet pattern is totally different than on the fixed stock. We have 3 rivets, 2 here and 1 back here. These are going to absorb recoil differently. I've also read online that the military guns have a reinforced rear trunnion for grenade launching. So that's just hearsay, take it as you will. I will say though, people say, oh, the NPAP's only made for the civilian market. The 1.0 mil receiver is only made for the civilian market. This is bumpkiss. The 1.0 mil receiver has been used on a lot of select fire guns by Zastava, dating back to the early 70s. They have a version of this called the M70AB1. It has the grenade sights, it was meant for launching grenades, and it uses this identical receiver. Also, they had a version of the M70B1, confusingly just called M70B1, with the fixed stock that was the same. And the M92 Crink, the AKSU, the shorty, which came out much later, uses this 1.0 receiver. So they did use this receiver. That's provable. So it wasn't just made for the American market. But back to my point, this would absorb recoil differently in the rear, and the rear seems to be where the test was showing some stress on the NPAP. So really this gun would need to be tested separately. I haven't read of many NPAP DF owners having problems, but then again, there were far fewer of them out in the wild, say 10 to 1 compared to the fixed stock. So who knows how many have been put at a high round count. We certainly haven't put many rounds through this one, under 1,000 for sure. So it's hard for me to say too. But if you're, the NPAP fixed stock isn't really representative of the OPAP fixed or the NPAP DF underfolding because they have radically different receivers and, in this case, trunnions. So to really know how either of these would perform, we have to have a separate test because they really are different guns. But if you're going to say the NPAP DF is questionable because of the AK Operators Union test, then you must also admit that the OPAP is also questionable. It's just one of those things because they're equally the same and different from the NPAP fixed stock. Personally though, just to conclude, I wouldn't worry about it. Every gun's going to fail. The only way to keep your gun from having wear is to never shoot it, and that's not fun. We all know that Wassers can make it way up there, 10, 20, 30, 50,000 rounds. On the other hand, I've seen guns, Wassers, that because they were lemons, they had hidden flaws, failed at 500 rounds. The truth is you don't really know how far a gun will make it until you actually shoot it to that point. You can extrapolate and guess, but you really don't know till you shoot your gun. Any gun made could have a hidden flaw. Or it could be a hidden gem that'll run forever. You just don't know. But why worry about it? These are not high dollar guns. They're $500-$600. If you shoot 5,000 rounds through them, you've already spent more on ammo than you did on the gun. If it fails at 10 or 20,000, buy another one. And again, they're not high dollar. They're not Arsenal or, Definitive Arms prices. And it may not. It probably won't, honestly. They're good guns. But why worry over what might possibly happen? If you have a $500 gun break, I know that sucks, but think about this. Every time your car breaks, it probably costs you nearly that much. And how often does that happen in your life? Or your hot water tank burst. We have had that happen to ourselves twice, and it definitely costs more than $500 each time to fix it and replace it. Mechanical things break. I think the NPAP, fixed or folder, is a really good investment, really good shooter, really good gun for the money. And the ones I've owned and the ones that I've asked my customers that have bought themselves all have good things to say. I have no real bad first-hand experience, aside from a recoil spring that was obviously too weak. Other than that, good luck. I just don't think worrying about what might possibly, potentially, maybe slightly might happen is really worth it. It's certainly not worth avoiding a good gun while they're coming in. Now, are these better than a Wasser? I'm not saying that. They're a different feature set, and that's not what this video is about. But these are my thoughts on the NPAP, and this is why I still trust it. I just haven't seen conclusive evidence that these things are subpar. They might have an issue or two, but let's be honest, most economy guns do. Wassers had issues for years. Some of the Arsenals have had known issues. Everyone can put out a lemon too. Keep that in mind. Well, I just wanted to share this with you today. Hope it was at least interesting. I'm not really telling you what to think. I'm just saying maybe think about it. Analyze for yourself. Research for yourself what's going on with these. Don't just take a 2-second blurb as conclusive evidence. Really dig into these. That's what I did, and after doing it extensively, I feel confident and I trust the Serbian Zastava NPAP, and these are still coming in, and I would still recommend them to a customer. In fact, I just ordered some more underfolders last week. If you have any questions or have your own NPAP stories, please share them below. If you liked the video, please click. If you haven't already subscribed, could do so, that'd be great too. Appreciate your time, and please tune in again for more hopefully unique and thought-provoking videos. This is Misha. We'll catch you then.